Hey everyone, Dockwell here, and welcome to another one of my Dota 2 hero guides. Today we're going to be taking a look at Lifestealer. Lifestealer is a carry hero, and he's one of these carry heroes that is pretty good at everything, but he's not the best at any one thing. And because of that, I would say he's like a middle-of-the-road carry hero. He can do pretty well in lane. He's not like the best laner. He doesn't want to be aggressive in every lane, but he's pretty good. He's sustainable, and he's kind of hard to kill. And so he usually has a good lane. He can farm pretty quickly, but not the quickest. He doesn't have too many innate like farming abilities and those kinds of things, so he usually wants to build some kind of farming item. And then he can kind of split push because he's survivable, but he doesn't really clear waves all that quickly like some other heroes. And he can snowball the game and do a ton of damage, take towers pretty quickly if he gets a lot of items, those kinds of things, but he doesn't have like a ton of innate tower push, especially early on. He can participate in team fights, and sometimes he wants to, but he doesn't necessarily have to because he can farm up some of his items. You know, he might participate after an item or two, but then he can also farm up, you know, more items and be even bigger threat in the late game depending on the matchup. So because of that, I'd say he's a good carry to practice or to play to get used to the carry role in general, because he does have a lifesteal ability, which we'll take a look at. He has a built-in BKB that allows him to, you know, resist a lot of magic damage and be very good against stuns and those kinds of things. So he's kind of one of these, your average prototypical carry hero that I think would be good for newer players to learn. He does get changed here and there a lot, so it is one of those weird heroes that his abilities keep getting changed and they keep getting adjusted slightly or added or subtracted, those kinds of things. So it may change in the future after I make this guide, but regardless, he still plays similarly, no matter what. And I'll just go over his strengths and weaknesses to kind of give you more of a pinpoint to this, and what he's good at is he can right-click very hard. He's a very good right-clicking carry, as most carries are. He does have a good amount of sustain. He's very survivable because of that sustain and his ult and his BKB. And he's good against, at least now, tanky strength heroes that don't have a lot of armor. That could change, like it depends, because his ability, we'll take a look at it, it does percentage-based damage now. It used to not, and then before that, it also used to before. So they had it that way, then they took it away, now they gave it back. So it just kind of depends. But in general, he's usually good against tankier heroes with low armor. And then he's also obviously good against magic damage because of his sustain and his built-in BKB, as well as his ult, which we'll take a look at in a minute. And then his weaknesses are, he doesn't really clear waves super fast. He doesn't farm very, very fast. So, you know, he's not like a Sven or like a Luna or anything like that. So he doesn't farm as quickly as some other carries. He doesn't like right-click damage that's really, really like burst-heavy right-click damage, like a PA or a Drow or something like that, where they can just kind of click him through his rage, through his BKB ability, and still kill him, or like PA can blink on him and just blow him up. And that's also because he's a strength hero, so he doesn't get a lot of armor through getting agility or agility items. So he may buy an armlet or an AC, but those are really the only armor items he'll get. So he generally has low-ish armor, and because of that, he can get bursted down by right-click damage. And then he is able to get kited. He has some tools to deal with, like kiting from force stabs and all these things, but once he pops Rage, it's kind of easy to blow him up. So Rage is one of those abilities, his BKB ability, that you have to just be very careful and strategic about when you're using it. You really have to make sure you're using it at the right time. You're not wasting it. You're not popping it too early, but you're not popping it too late so that you get bursted without using it, those kinds of things. And that's honestly one of the biggest parts of the hero. So that's how you can think about Jug. Like I said, middle-of-the-road hero, pretty good at everything, not the best at anything. So without further ado, let's just take a look at his abilities and what makes him survivable, what makes him that middle-of-the-road hero like I talked about. So now that we understand Lifestealer in general, we can take a look at his abilities and what allow him to be that kind of tanky, sustained hero that also has that built-in BKB. So first, we're just going to take a look at that ability, which is Rage, and that's what gives him that BKB ability. So he just pops it, and he gets magic immune for 6 seconds, and he also has a little bit of bonus move speed right now. So pretty much all you do, you click it, and there you go. Now you are magic immune. You pretty much have a BKB for that 6 seconds, and you can walk a little faster, like I said. So that's that ability. It's pretty simple, but it's kind of the key ability on the hero in the sense that using this ability, when to use it, like I said, how to use it in team fights, not using it too late, but not using it too early, all of those kinds of things, using it to kill somebody, then backing off before it's up again, because it does have an 18-second cooldown right now, so kind of using it once and then maybe backing out and then using it again, those kinds of things are what you need to consider when you're using this ability, and that's really the key to playing Lifestealer, especially in team fights. So That's Rage, and now we're going to move on and look at his two passive abilities as they are right now, which the first one is Feast, and this is pretty simple. It is a lifesteal ability. It allows him to lifesteal and also do extra damage based on the max HP of the enemy. So we can just kind of have a little right-click battle here with this axe, and you can see he just keeps lifestealing, as axe does damage to him, but not really, because I'm just going to keep right-clicking and keep gaining all of that health back that axe is taking. Now, you can't really see that I'm doing extra damage, but it says it in the ability. Just trust me, you're doing extra damage based on the health that the enemy has. So that's Feast. Pretty simple. Basically a sustain thing for lane, for jungle, for, for doing better at those kinds of trades or team fight trades, manning up on people, those kinds of things. So that's what Feast is for. And next, we'll look at this Ghoul Frenzy ability. This is a relatively new ability for Lifestealer. And what this does is it pretty much gives him extra attack speed and also slows the enemy. So let's just take a look at, this is how fast Axe is walking, just normally. And now we'll start attacking him. And we'll see that Axe is going a little bit slower because of that. So we'll stop attacking. It lasts for a little bit, and now Axe can walk pretty fast again. So that's basically what this does. It also, like I said, gives you attack speed, so it does help like in the lane with last hitting and those kinds of things, and also with harassing people in the lane, all of that kind of stuff. But in general, attack speed is very good for, carrying into the late game. Attack speed is one of the main things. Like damage and attack speed is like two of the biggest things that you need to carry. So that helps him a lot. But also that move slow just helps him stick on targets in a team fight or in the lane, those kinds of things. Because if he's if your move speed is faster than this guy's, you can just stick on him and not get kited. So that really helps him not get kited, along with that extra move speed when you do pop this Rage ability. So those are all of his basic abilities, and now we'll take a look at his Infest ability. So Infest is kind of like, let's say, like a Slark ult or something like that, where basically how you want to think about this ult is it's a save for yourself. So let's say you popped Rage, the enemy's still going on you, they stun you, but you're almost dead. What you want to do is you want to use it on an ally, or you want to use it on a creep around you to basically infest it, go inside of it, and then you take control of it. And while you're inside there, you will basically regen, and then you can pop out at any time. And when you pop out, you do damage in that AoE, and you also regenerate it. Now, the one thing to consider also when you're using this ability is that if you do go inside of an ally, let's see, 300 health here, I go inside, now he has 1100 health. So it is actually something that you can use to save an ally as well, because you can go into ally heroes. So just something to keep in mind, that you can use it as a save. You can also use it as a last hit for damage, like if somebody's getting away because it has somewhat of an AoE and there's creeps around, you can get in it and then quickly pop it, and in that AoE, it'll do damage. You can get that last hit on the hero that you're trying to chase, or you're trying to pick off, or you're trying to kill, or whatever. So that is something to consider as well. It can be a save, it can be that extra damage that you need, but a lot of times it's something that you're using to save yourself, or regen your ally, or those kinds of things. And then lastly, what you want to use this for as well is you use it as a ganking tool. What you'll do is before you smoke or you go to a lane, you maybe will infest let's say you have a Storm Spirit. You'll infest the Storm Spirit, then the Storm Spirit zips in, to the guy, starts attacking him. You burst out of the Storm Spirit, use your abilities and start attacking and do a lot of damage. So it's just a way to kind of help with the gank as well. You can get into a Storm Spirit, or a Slardar is another typical one, any kind of initiation hero like that. It's good to pair, Lifestealer's good to pair with that kind of hero, because you can infest them and then go get a pick off and then kind of snowball from there, because now it's 4v5 or whatever. So that is the Infest ability, his ultimate. It's kind of this weird ability where it's used in a lot of different ways, like I said, to save, to gank, to save an ally, save yourself during a gank, save yourself during a team fight, do a little bit of extra damage in a fight, all of those kinds of things. So it's a very complicated ability in that way to know exactly when to use it. But I think it's one of those things that it seems complicated, but you can generally figure out how to use it in team fights. But it is one of those things that you're not using it a ton, so using it correctly is something that you're just going to have to learn while you play Lifestealer, as you play Lifestealer, maybe as you watch some replays and those kinds of things. So that is Lifestealer's abilities. We have the two passive ones, just help him do more damage. We have the Rage, which is the built-in BKB, and then this ultimate, which is this kind of weird ultimate that does a lot of different things that you're not going to be using all that often, but it is important to use it at certain times. Now, the other thing, I usually don't do this, it just depends on the hero, but I will talk about his shard, because his shard is open wounds. And what open wounds is it's basically an ability that you just click on a hero, and it just applies a slow, and it also makes everyone that's right-clicking that hero, the enemy, get lifesteal, basically. So you can like use it on Roche, and you can use it on heroes and those kinds of things, so that everybody that's clicking him gets extra lifesteal. And this used to be a normal ability in place of Ghoul Frenzy as of, I don't know, like 6 months, a year ago, whenever it was. So I just wanted to mention that because it could get changed in the future. And so just know that open wounds is a thing, but now it's in the shard. You basically just click it on a hero, they are slower, and you get more lifesteal when you're right-clicking them. It's pretty simple, but it's a good way to, if you're getting kited a lot in fights, like yes, you have the slow, but they have a lot of force stabs or other things like that, or, you know, they're just fast in general, then this open wounds can definitely be something that helps, because, you know, even if they force staff, they're really, really slow, so you can catch up with them really quick, because you're probably going to buy phase boots, and then you have your rage where you can, you know, move even faster and those kinds of things. So it's just something to consider, and it may become a normal ability again in next year or who knows when. So I just wanted to highlight that as well. So that is Lifestealer. Those are all of his abilities, and you can probably tell that he seems pretty good, but he doesn't seem like extremely OP or anything like that. So it is a matter of, you know, what you're going to do, what you're going to buy, how you're going to farm, those kinds of things. All of what you're going to do in the game in your matchups and how you use your abilities is what's going to determine how effective this hero is and how good it feels and whether or not you're going to be able to win the game. So now that we know what his abilities do and kind of what the hero does in general, we can take a look at how it's applied in-game. So now we're going to jump into a replay here of Sumail playing Lifestealer, and I'm actually just going to fast forward here a little bit, like just go into extra speed. Let's just do like 4 times speed, because I don't want to talk about that much specifically, because the hero is kind of standard. Like, you just want to be getting last hits, and the only real thing to talk about is that you can tell he's being aggressive at times when it makes sense, because he has a slow, he has lifesteal, he has good sustain. I will say his support is feeding, but which is not great. But like basically, he'll be aggressive when he can, because he has that slow, so he can get those clicks in. He's very good at trading. But this lane against a Dawnbreaker and Pugna should be, I mean, that's pretty dangerous. The Pugna's ranged, Dawnbreaker's pretty tanky and can do a lot of damage and can be very, very annoying in lane, these kinds of things. So this is a lane that typically you would think is like kind of dangerous, I'd say. But because Lifestealer's so good at just sustaining and has a built-in BKB ability, we see he hasn't even leveled it yet, that we can kind of just tell. I know we're going really fast, but basically he's just kind of focusing on last hitting. And now that, you know, now that he has 4 levels, and he has his rage ability, he's being a little bit more aggressive onto the Pugna whenever he can, because he knows, like, there's pretty much nothing that this duo can do to him because of his rage ability, because of his sustain, these kinds of things. Like, he's just not scared at all. So, because of that, he's being, like I said, he's being aggressive when he can, but what he's mainly doing is focusing on last hits. And we see he has the most last hits in the game. He's really dominating the lane because of that, because he's focusing on getting his last hits. And whenever the Pugna comes up and he feels, okay, Pugna, you're too close, like right here. You're too close to the creeps. I don't like that you're here. Like, you shouldn't be here. You shouldn't be allowed to be here, because I'm just going to keep right-clicking you down, and there's, like, nothing you can do. So that's basically the laning stage, to be honest. And it's almost that simple in every Lifestealer game. It's just like, can you sustain? Can you be aggressive? Do they have threat on you? And a lot of times it's no, because you're just that strong. Like, the only heroes that you need to be careful of are like something like a Timbersaw or something like that. And but that's very matchup specific. Timbersaw is a very weird hero. But most matchups, I mean, it's very similar to what we just saw. So I actually do want to rewind a little bit. I mean, you may have seen it when I was talking, but I just wanted to finish my point there. It's right before this. So he gets really, really aggressive onto the Pugna. And this is just the perfect example of how to save yourself with your ultimate. So you see, he dies under the tower. He thinks he's going to kill Pugna, but, you know, Pugna ends up using his ability, using his ult and those kinds of things. So he says, okay, whatever. I'm just going to infest this creep, run away, and you see he's regenning. If you look here down at the bottom, he's regenning, and then once he's about full in health, and he sees where the Pugna is, and he knows where the Pugna is, he just bursts out of it to do damage to the Pugna, and now he has full health. and he can just go back to farming. Like, it's pretty simple. Now, he does have to be careful, because level 1, this ultimate is a pretty long cooldown. As we see, it's like 90 seconds there, and so he does need to be careful. He probably won't make another play like that, like another dive, without that ultimate, because he knows, like, if he gets in trouble and he used his rage already, he might be screwed. He might actually die to the Pugna or the Pugna +1. But that's pretty much all you need to know. Like, just when your ultimate is on cooldown, when your Q is on cooldown, you just need to be a little more careful. But we see he can even be aggressive still, because he knows he still has his rage if any trouble happens. So it's just one of those things. When you have your ult, when you have your Q, be careful when you're using them. When you don't have them off cooldown, like, just be very careful. But otherwise, farm, sustain, hit some jungle creeps, push out the wave, those kinds of things. It's pretty simple to play Lifestealer early on. So that's Lifestealer's laning stage, honestly. And it's pretty straightforward, as you can see. So we skipped ahead a little bit here, only like a minute. And I just want to show you this quickly, because it's a mistake that a lot of people can make on Lifestealer. Lifestealer is really strong. Lifestealer can sustain in lane and kind of stay in the safe lane for a long time, because it's hard for people to push him out. But you see here, he's just staying in his lane, you know. He sees the Haunt go out. He says, oh, there's going to be a fight mid. Then he gets stunned by the Lion while he's TPing, and he says, okay, well, I'm just going to go on this stupid Lion. Like, this Lion's level 5. What is he going to do to me? Well, he uses Rage, gets overly aggressive, and then the Ember Spirit TPs in, and they're able to kill him before he's able to get that Infest, like, right at the last second into that creep. And that's just the perfect example of how even pro players, even players that are really, really good, can get overly aggressive and, you know, think they're immortal or think they're unkillable on someone like Lifestealer. And then he pops that rage because he doesn't want to get stunned by the Lion or, like, hexed by the Lion. And then he realizes, oh crap, like, I popped my rage. I don't have a creep to infest into. I'm just dead now that the Ember Spirit TP'd in. And so it's just one of those things that to keep in mind with Lifestealer, that yes, you can be extremely hard to kill. You can defend your tower really, really well, but sometimes you can kind of feel too cocky and overextend, just like Sumail did there. And then if the enemy heroes, you know, TP in 1 or 2, you'll just die. And so that's just something to be aware of. It's something to keep in mind, that is like a weakness of Lifestealer, is almost that you get tricked into thinking you're unkillable, and then you overextend because you pop your rage too early. So that's just an example of early on how popping your rage too early or not having creeps around to infest can get you killed.
That's more like it.
So we skipped ahead a little bit. There was a couple team fights. He's just been farming. But this is another example of the same kind of mistake. Just an overextension because you just feel pretty much unkillable. Now, I mean, now he has creeps around, right? He dodges that stun, and he says, okay, I'm just going to go click this guy. Like, what are they going to do? Because I can just infest in a creep. Well, there's only one creep left. They're able to Searing Chains it, and now he just dies. And it's just one of those things that, it's Sumail. He's a really good player, obviously. He's a pro player, and he still overextends because he just feels like he's unkillable. He feels like he has so much, you know, innate tankiness. He feels like he has his rage and he has his infest. Like, what are they going to do? But 2 heroes there end up taking him down because he just overextends. He feels a little bit too strong, stronger than he actually is. And so I just want to show you those 2 examples because I just want to harp on it that this is honestly the biggest thing that you will probably do as Lifestealer, where you're just going to feel too strong and you're not actually that strong, and it'll actually make you ruin your own game. Because of that. And so you'll overextend, you'll feed a couple times, and it'll feel really, really bad, because if you just didn't do those things, you would actually, you know, be way more farmed and do a lot more damage and end up carrying the game, but because you make those few mistakes, it ends up hurting you a lot. So I know it's harping a little bit on mistakes, not necessarily how to play well, but I think Lifestealer is one of those heroes that it's kind of straightforward in some ways how to play him correctly. What you really need to worry about is how to not overextend. We see him overextending again in a team fight. And what's funny is they actually do end up winning this game, but he's just feeling too strong, overextending, using his abilities like off cooldown. And obviously that was like a team fight. It's a little bit of his team's fault too. It's everyone's fault there that they died, but you just can see him constantly overextending, and instead of farming, he ends up dying. You know, what are his deaths here? He ends up being 0-3 because instead of farming, he took team fights. And so that's what I was kind of saying before, is as Lifestealer, you can take team fights. It's not bad. You're pretty strong early. But it's one of those things that, you know, if you die, if you overextend, if you make mistakes like that, it can feel really, really bad because you just, like on any hero, you just rather be farming as carry than making those mistakes. But at the same time, you kind of feel like, oh, if I don't help my team, they may all die. So it's just that balance, and that's kind of like a carry in general balance, but that's what Lifestealer is. That's like how you play Lifestealer and how you make decisions on Lifestealer, because it's not like AM where you're just like, okay, my idea is I just want to farm all the time, or you're like Slark. If I have my ult up and I have my Q up, I'm just going to fight and run around and like annoy people, you know. It's not that straightforward. It's not that simple. So yeah, that's basically making mistakes on Lifestealer, how to try to avoid them, just like be a little more cautious, be a little more careful, play careful when you don't have your spells up, those kinds of things. And don't play too greedy, don't play too aggressive, because then you might feed and you're probably going to ruin your own game when you do those kinds of things. So that's just those examples of that. Now maybe we can take a look at a few other ways to play Lifestealer, of how to actually do the correct things in the fight and the correct things in the game. So the next thing I want to show you is how to gank with Lifestealer on an initiation hero like Doom. So he's actually infested in the Doom right now, and they're just going to look for a pickoff. They're slightly ahead, but they're not super ahead. They actually had Aegis, and it just expired. And now we see Doom goes in. He actually pops out immediately, but gets stunned by the line, so it's not actually ideal. But still, because of the initiation that they were able to get, they got 2 kills instantly. Now they're able to get a good team fight going, then they get a 3rd kill. They get a buyback, but just the fight is just not going well to start off because of that initiation with the Doom, with the Infest. So it's basically now it's a 3v5 with, or a 3v4 with the buyback, and we can just fast forward a little bit here and see that, you know, the enemy's trying to fight again, but the Doom ends up dying, but getting the Doom off on the Spectre, and the Spectre can't escape there, and so the Spectre does go down. And so I just wanted to give you an example, which I think that is a pretty decent example of how to use Infest to initiate. Obviously, this is high-level Dota, so things can sometimes go wrong, and obviously he popped out and got stunned, so it wasn't ideal, but that's just a good example of how you can, like I said, gank or initiate a fight with an Infest. It's like an Infest bomb is what they call it, with your Lifestealer and any kind of initiation hero, like an offlane or a Storm or those kinds of things. So now, I just want to talk in general about what happened since those mistakes that we saw. Because if we actually look at the scoreboard here, we see that Smail is 6-3. He was 0-3. And what happened was, I didn't really show it to you because it was relatively boring, to be honest. He kind of just said, okay, I'm going to stop being aggressive. I'm going to stop overextending with, you know, popping my rage and running in. I'm going to farm. And I'm going to put myself in aggressive positions on the map, you know, pushing top wave all the way over here, or pushing mid wave in a little bit, and I'm not going to use my rage, but I'm going to use like the threat of rage. Basically, the enemy knows I have this ability, so instead of using it, I'm just going to say like, okay, if you guys try to go on me, I'm just going to use my rage, and I'm just going to get out, but I'm going to push and farm aggressively. And so that's basically what he did. He just changed his mindset for the last like 20 minutes in the game, basically. And so he got his farm up. They ended up taking a decent fight, or like they tried to gank him, but he just popped rage and it didn't work because he was just like kind of farming. And then they were able to take Roche and kind of snowball the game from here. So there wasn't really too much to show because it was kind of 15 minutes of him just like farming. But I just want to like kind of contrast that between like how he was being a little bit too aggressive in the beginning and what he was doing to get back to this point. So right here, I'll just rewind it a little bit. You probably just saw it, but this is how you use Infest to save your ally heroes. We see Doom goes in, immediately gets hexed, stunned, and ulted from Pugna, and Lifestealer infests the Doom to make sure that the Doom is able to get off his BKB, survive the stun, and end up trying to turn the fight. Now, obviously, the fight goes pretty poorly because their 2 supports instantly die, they have to get a buyback, these kinds of things, but the fight could have been way, way worse if the Doom instantly died. So the fight doesn't end up going the best, but it's just a good example of how you can save your allies with your Infest when needed. So this is the last little clip I want to show you here because I think this has everything else in it to show you. And this is that they eventually got Aegis, and that we can just see here, he's pretty much solo pushing this tower. Now his team is around him, or they could get to him, but Lifestealer's really, really good with Aegis because he can just walk up, especially if you go this Deso AC build, you can do a lot of damage to towers, you have your rage, you can like pop rage, hit the tower, back off, all those kinds of things, and just take towers and there's almost nothing the enemy team can do about it. So that's just something to consider, that Lifestealer, especially with Aegis, can be really good at taking towers. Now, I want to take a look at this team fight because I think this is a really, really good example of how, one, Lifestealer can do a ton of damage. I mean, he bursts down that Spectre. But also, not only does he do a ton of damage in the late game, and he can carry really hard, but I think this is a good example of how he used his abilities. Like, he used his Infest to get the kill on the Spectre, but then he uses his Rage instantly. He says, okay, I'm raging, I'm low health, like I have Aegis, but my enemy, or my allies are pretty much dead. Like, I don't want to waste this Aegis, why don't I keep it and wait till the next time? And so he pops Rage, and instead of being super, super aggressive, he just runs away. And that is basically diametrically opposed to how he was playing earlier on in the game, where he would pop Rage, he would just be like, I'm invincible, I'd just run in and start clicking people, and then he'd be like, oh crap, you know, I only have like 1 or 2 more seconds of Rage, I didn't kill this guy, they're gonna turn on me, and then they would, you know, he'd try to run away, but they would eventually turn on him and kill him. And so, I think that's just a really good example of how to use your abilities, how to use Rage. It's a good example of, you know, how Lifestealer can be really good at pushing, but also how he can do a lot of damage to even a hero like Spectre, but then also how, if you use your abilities, you know, in the right way, in an aggressive way when it's appropriate, but also in a defensive way when appropriate, that's kind of the fine line you need to play with Lifestealer. And we even see there, he used his Rage a little bit too aggressively, but even at the very end of the Rage, he kind of backed off, but he knew that, you know, he had a Force Staff that could help him, and he can play a little bit more aggressively because he has that Aegis. But it's just it's that fine line. You have to play that game where it's like he kind of baited the team to going in on him because he used that Rage in such a way, and he knew his allies were going to back him up. I will say that this is obviously a higher MMR game, so it's one of those things to consider, that when you are at a lower MMR, your teammates aren't always going to be backing you up, so it might not be good to do one of those kind of aggressive bait plays. But in general, it's just all about when you use that Rage, and I just kind of wanted to harp on that with this replay, because I think that's the biggest part of the hero in general, because as you saw, you can do a ton of damage, you can push towers really well, especially once you get items, but when you use Rage and how you use it is just so key to the hero. So that is my Lifestealer guide. I hope it was good for you guys and you learned a lot. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, comment, and subscribe. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them in the comments below. If you want me to take a look at one of your replays, then just let me know. Give me the replay number below and I'd be happy to take a look at your game and give you some advice regardless of the hero or the position. So as always, thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next video.